I'm Dave Koss.
And I'm Matt Milstead, and together we run a motion design studio based out of Dallas called Nexus Motion.
We also run Brograph.com, which is a motion graphics tutorial site with tutorials, plugins, podcasts, and other stuff.
Awesome. So we got a couple of projects that we're going to be showing off today. I'm going to be showing off how we worked with Deadmau5 to create some concert visuals for his Cube for his New Year's Eve show. And Dave's going to be showing off the
projection mapping.
A
building at Busch Gardens, Virginia.
Yes. But first, let's show you who we are and what we do. All right, that's us. Thank you, guys. Big shout out to Tokyo Megaplex or Christopher Rutledge for the use of his song in our demo reel. It's great music. Okay, so I've been changing my my presentation up until about 5 minutes before I came up. So let's see how much I can mess this up. So in the demo reel you saw, we did some animation for. We've done a lot of animation for Deadmau5 concert visuals. He has his like little stand that he stands on, his DJ stand or whatever it is. I don't know. You don't call them DJs. Let's see. Let's pull this up. So I took some footage. This is the cube that he has. So he sits on top, and we've got these awesome animations, and you can see, even though they're flat, we get this cool perspective going on. So it's a super fun thing to work on because you get to create some really you get to be creative. So he hit me up, and he's like, hey, I've got this really good idea. We're going to go up there and help him with some concert visuals for his New Year's Eve show. And so he's like, I got this great idea. What if we turn the cube into a giant time bomb, and it's counting down to New Year's Eve? I'm like, okay, that's cool. Yeah, I like that idea. And he said, what if we get Justin Roiland from Rick and Morty to, like, Rick and Morty shows up? And they're trying to defuse the bomb, and they're thinking, oh, no, And so it's, mass chaos and stuff. And I was like, dude, I love the idea. It's great. So I got to work with one of my favorite artists, and I got to work with the creators of one of my favorite shows, and I was pretty sure that's about where I peaked in my career. So it's all downhill from here. So, but I'm going to show you guys the actual video and how we went about making it. We used some really awesome stuff, but I'm going to show you the video. Big heads up, super not suitable for work if you've got speakers, because there are a lot of F-bombs. All right, let's have some fun.
All right, Morty, are you happy? Disneyland. Rick, I don't think this is Disneyland. Huh, yeah, no, I think you're right. Where are we, Rick? I'm not quite sure, Morty. Looks like a planet inhabited by shitheads who are worshipping a giant mouse. Oh, wait, never mind. It's just some other shithead wearing a mouse helmet. What's that beeping sound, Rick? Wow, that shithead up there really has it out for us. The last time I saw one of these, it leveled 18 city blocks. What? Do something! We gotta stop this thing, Rick! It's gonna kill us all! All right, calm down, Morty. You distract the mouse. I've got this. Hey, you stupid mouse character! Lucky for us, that dumb fucking mouse has zero idea how to... Oh, shit. Wrong one. What do you mean, wrong one? I don't know, Morty. This thing should be disarmed by now. Oh, fuck. I think this is it, Morty. We're all gonna die. What? No! I'm too young! We gotta do something! Well, what do you want me to do, Morty? I can't figure out this crazy bomb. The stupid dumb mouse character wired it all wacky and wonked up, and I don't know how to fucking do it, Morty. Well, you gotta do it, Rick. Otherwise, the whole place is gonna be exploded. Well, what do you want me to do, Morty? You're the one that wanted to go to Disneyland so you could watch Tinkerbell fly across the thing. Yeah, but I'm not the one that took us to this weird place with this weird idiot in the mouse hat. Oh. Well, oh. I guess it's New Year's. Right. Great. Happy New Year's, you fucking shitheads. Yeah, woo. Great. All right. Let's get the fuck out of here, Morty. This sucks. Yeah, man, this is bullshit. I just wanted to go to Disneyland and see the Tinkerbell thing. Maybe next year, Morty. Maybe next year. I'm getting the fuck out of here. I'm gonna go jerk off. Yeah, and I'm gonna go take a bunch of ecstasy, but a responsible amount. Don't do too much drugs. You can always take more, you can never take less. All right, let's get out of here, Rick. Come on.
All right. So that was the animation that we did for the New Year's Eve countdown. It was super fun to work on. So actually, here you can see it's basically broken into 3 layers. So if we're comping this in After Effects, we've got the top layer, which is our time bomb. You've got the middle layer, which is Rick and Morty, and then we got the background layer. The background layer was actually created by David Ariev while we were there. I just took it, and I was like, I'm stealing this for the background. It's really good. If you want to see it animated, it's over at the Otoy booth. Okay, so how do we do this? Let's go ahead, and I'm going to open up the cube template that he gave us. Oh, it's already open. No, I would lie. Cube template. So you can see this is what we were given. And we had to make sure that everything stayed within this grid right here. And he already had the camera set up perfectly so that that was in a good perspective. So we're going to create a cube, and boom, we're done. Cube, right? Now, all right, we're going to make that editable. And then we're going to change our anchor points. I'm going to hit L, and then I'm going to turn on my snapping, enable snap, and I'm going to do edge as well. So I'm going to move over here to the corner, and then I'm going to move over here up, and you'll see why here in a second. So let's turn this off. Let's keep our snap on, and then move this to the corner and move that one down. So now I've got my anchor point in a really good spot. So once I scale this up, you can see it scales up perfectly, and I don't get any intersections with the grid. Great, awesome. So we got to create this upper layer for them to on the top layer of our After Effects comp. So in here, we're just going to click on here on each one, go into polygon mode, hit MS for, or MW, sorry, for inner extrude. We're going to inner extrude this a little bit, and then we're going to hit D, and we're going to extrude inward or whatever. Then we're going to go into point mode, select our rectangle, and then we're just going to move these points up so that we've got that going in here. Okay, cool. So now we've got like just the basic place for them to be, the bomb layout, because they're going to be in those windows. We're going to delete that, and then we're going to delete these 3 other polygons as well. Cool. Now we've got, if we were to export this out, we'd have an alpha layer, you know, of everything that we can lay on top. So 2 of the other things that I really liked about this, most of this was just the same stuff. It was basic box modeling. I can go back to the actual time bomb, and you can see a lot of it was just basic box modeling. Or over there, we've got some cloners. You know, we got some cloners here with a few hidden Easter eggs. That's Matt. That says Matt in numerical things. In case of emergency, Squanch family. You know. A few Rick and Morty things in there. So the things that I really liked about this that were fun were these wires here, and then the countdown. So I'll show you how we made that. So in our cube template, we're going to go back, and we're going to go back into, in our camera, we're going to go to our left side, all right? I'm going to make this big so that we can see, and then we're going to go into our sketch tool. In our sketch tool, we're just going to like sketch out some stuff, and it's okay if it looks dumb, you know, because the sketch tool, it's allowed to be rough, and it'll totally smooth things out after we're done. So I'm going to be kind of rough with it. Blah, blah, blah. There we go. Okay, cool. And it like automatically smooths stuff out. So that's just one of the wires. I'm going to take this into a sweep NURBS, or just sweep, I guess you call it now. Throw the circle and the spline, and you see it's gigantic. Let's go ahead and scale down the circle. And I think my my thing is wrong. Let's do X, Y. There we go. Cool. Scale that down. Awesome. And we got these wires. Cool. But what I really liked about the wires is how they like kind of overlap each other and stuff like that. And there's a really easy way we can do this. You know, you don't have to just create them and then move the points and stuff. You'll have to do a little bit of that maybe, but this is super cool. And this is really good for like creating roads or something on like terrain. Let me make this circle just a little bit smaller so we've got more room to work. So I'm going to go back in. I'm going to go sketch, and then I'm just going to kind of like go over some of these, you know. Now, the big thing with this is you want to make sure that what it's going to be sitting on, you don't go over it. So I don't want to go outside of where the cube area is. So let's just go there, and then that should be good. OK, cool. Now you see here, it doesn't look good. If we were to throw this into a sweep NURBS, you'll see, just replace that. They all intersect, and I don't like that. I want it to be like overlapping and stuff. So let me pull my spline out, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into point mode. I'm going to select all my points, and I'm going to do, I just learned this, US to subdivide, and then US again. Because what we're going to be doing is we're basically going to be projecting this spline onto all of our geometry and say, OK, go around everything else. So I'll show you what we do. Then we can go into the full mode. I've got my lock camera, so. And we'll bring this out a little bit. Now, on our left camera, what we're going to do is we're going to select our spline. And then we're going to go to Mesh, Spline, and Project. Now, we want to make sure that we're on our left camera, that we've got that one highlighted, because we want it to project along our view. We hit Apply, and you'll see that actually goes around now a lot of our tubes and stuff. You see? So the more spline, or the more points you have, that's why I went through and I actually subdivided it, because the more points that you have, it's actually looking for intersections on the points and the actual geometry. So if you have more and more points, it's going to give you much finer detail on where it is. So then once we throw that back into our sweep, you know, you can see they actually overlap each other, which is pretty cool. It's a really easy way to do things. All right, cool. So I'm going to make another cube. The other thing that we had to do was the countdown. You know, and I used basically, I basically just used After Effects for this. But in order to get it on here, I actually wanted it to count down on here instead of just doing a corner pin data and stuff like that. I actually wanted it to be on here because I was using Octane and I wanted to get that good glow from it. So I'll show you how we did that in After Effects. So basically, I did this, you know, created just the basic shape of it. Made that editable, went into polygon mode, MW for inner extrude, and then D for regular extrude. Oops, I went a little too far. OK, cool. In our cube, what we're going to do is we're going to go into polygon mode. And you can see down here, this gives you like the actual size. So like if I was to change this to something like easy, like 75 and 183 or whatever, now think of that as pixels. OK, so our height is 75 pixels, and our width is 183. So that's great. So now we can use that data specifically in After Effects to create our composition. So our composition, let's see, what was this? 75 and 183. So height 183, height 75, right? Yeah. And what we're going to do is we're going to make our frame rate 1 frame per second, because we don't need like 300 or 3,600 frames of countdown, because you're really only seeing 1 frame a second. So we're going to make this 1 frame a second, and let's make this like 120 frames or something. Cool. I think that's right. So what we're going to do, so see, you can see here, it's the same size as right there. Perfect. Awesome. Yeah, great. So we're going to do a new solid. In our solid, we're going to call this clock. OK. And then we're going to use, we're going to go to Effect, Text, Numbers. Let's change this to Digital 7. It's good stuff. Cool. Now you see that. But on our type, we're going to change this to time code. All right? So within time code, you can see that it's counting up per our time. Now, we're going to be counting down, but that's OK. We'll fix that later. But the biggest thing with this is you can see that it's like jumping all around. Let's unclick this proportional spacing, and then we get the even spacing there. Cool. Now, I don't like the kerning on this too much. No, I don't want to do that there. I want to change the size here. And you can change the tracking, but like it changes it all over. And if that's something that you like, everyone has their own opinions, whatever. So I want to change the kerning on this a little bit. So I'm going to throw this in a pre-comp, and I'm going to say clock, countdown, pre-comp, and then I'm going to move all the attributes to the new composition. Cool. Now, if I duplicate this a couple of times, I can actually use my mask tool and just like mask out the different areas. Because if you were to use this not in the pre-comp or in the actual like composition, it wouldn't let you use the masks. It's something weird with the numbers thing. So we're just going to move those over. We like the kerning on this now. Oh, beautiful. All right. So we're going to go to about a minute. There we go. I'm going to set my out point. And what's cool with this is we don't have to render all these extra frames and stuff. That's why we only did 1 frame a second. Because we can change that up in Cinema. So I'll do a PNG sequence. OK, let's go ahead and do this. My Siggraph text, I'll just call this countdown. Counter downer. All right, and then that's my text, countdown, cool, save, render, boom, done. See, that was super fast. We didn't have to mess with that at all. So in here, we can create a new material by double-clicking. Then within our texture, we're going to load an image. We're going to load these countdowns. OK, cool. Did I do that right? I think so. Text. There we go. Countdown. I got all these. I should have put it in a folder. That was bad on me. OK, so cool. We've got this. But you see it's still counting up. Let's go to our editor and animate preview. Let's go ahead and throw that on there so that you guys can see it. So, you know, while it's going, it should be going. Oh, that's right. OK, so within our color, we're going to go in there, and we want to tell it that it's animation. So we'll go over to Animation tab and hit Calculate. And now you should see, OK, cool, it's counting up. But it's counting up way too fast. So you've got these options down here. We want it to count down. So we're going to start at 60, and we're going to end at 0. And then the movie frame rate, we're going to go back to 1 frame a second. Now you can see, as we're going, it's just counting. So it saved us a ton of time, a ton of render time and stuff like that. So that's how we created the countdown. That's how we created the bomb. You know, all the rest of the bomb is just basic stuff. So the other big thing that we had to do was figure out how we were going to do the characters. And so we did a lot of R&D for this to try and figure out what was going to be the best way. Now, I knew we could probably just take a still frame from one of the episodes and maybe do like a Duick in After Effects or maybe just a simple IK rig in Cinema. And that didn't bother me too much because we've done character animation like that before. What was really bothering me was this was 2 minutes almost of actual like mouth animation. So figuring out how to animate mouths really quickly, we tried to figure this out. So we were able to figure it out using the cloner and the sound effector. And I'll show you. So Rick Mouth, this is what we came up with.
All right, Morty, are you happy? Disneyland.
So I don't know if you can hear that very well.
Disneyland.
There you go. Okay,
All right,
cool.
Morty, are you happy?
So it's basically using
Disneyland.
a cloner
All right,
and
Morty,
a sound
are you
effector
happy?
in order to read the
Disneyland.
amplitude
All right,
of
Morty,
it
are you
and then
happy?
change
Disneyland.
which
All
one
right,
we're
Morty,
working
are
with.
you-
Okay, cool. So let's go ahead and build that out. Let's start a new project. I'm going to go into front mode, and I'm going to grab my sketch tool. So let's start off with a closed mouth, you know, and this isn't going to be like super beautiful because we're just doing it really quick. Okay, so that's our closed mouth. Beautiful. Closed mouth. And then we're just going to duplicate this. And it's really important that you're duplicating or you're working with the same amount of points and polygons as the thing that you're blending to. Otherwise, you're going to get all sorts of funkiness. So let's go ahead and change this to open mouth. And we're going to scale this up. Whoop, wrong way. Scale that there. And then maybe adjust some of the points a little bit. Do that. Make it look a little bit prettier. OK. So cool. So we've got the open mouth and the closed mouth. Let's go ahead and throw a MoGraph cloner in here. And we're going to drop these into the cloner. And now, normally you're thinking, oh, cloners are so used to, I'm used to like linear cloners or grid or honeycomb arrays. You know, why would you use it for this? Well, this is great. So we're going to make our count 1. Because we only need one of those. We don't need a whole bunch of them. And what we're going to do, instead of iterating between our clones, we're going to blend. Now, let me show you this. So as we're going along, as we're creating more in a linear, it actually gets bigger and bigger. So, but we only need 1. So let's go down to 1. And what we're going to do is we're click on our cloner, go to our effector, and add a sound effector. Now, we want to sample the entire amplitude. We don't care about individual frequencies. We want the entire thing. So on this amplitude, we're going to just select the entire thing. And then let's load in the voice stuff. Let's see, Nexus Motion, Matt. There we go. Got an isolated Rick one. So let's do this.
Morty, are you
Okay, so you can see this now. It's doing something, but it's not doing what we want. It's only moving the position. So if you look at the parameter, this is what it is. It's only moving the position. So let's unclick that. And I believe it's Modify Clone. There we go. So now, turning Modify Clone up to 100%,
Morty, are you happy?
boom,
Disneyland.
it automatically animates that
Morty,
spline.
are you happy?
So now what we can do is we can throw the cloner and the circle into a sweep. And let's scale down that circle again, of course. And actually, when we were trying to figure this out, Dave and I got on a Skype call with EJ Hassenfrost, so big shout out to him for helping us out with this one. So now you can
Morty,
see,
are you happy? Disneyland.
which is cool.
All right,
All right,
Morty, are
great.
you
We got the
happy?
lips. You know, we can add
Disneyland.
some sketch and tune to
All right,
that,
Morty.
and then we're good to go. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is we got to work with. So this technique actually we didn't end up using. Joel introduced us to the guys over at VRChat. And let's see, big shout out to GM Beats on Twitter, GM3 Beats on Twitter, and GM3 at VRChat. He created this entire studio for us. So this is in Unity. What I did was I exported the BOM as an FBX, and they created this entire production studio for us. Now, I don't know if you guys have messed around with VRChat. It's basically in your Oculus Rift or your Vive, you know, you can think Ready Player One, where you can be your own avatar and you can walk around and you can chat with people. So they went through and actually modeled Rick and Morty characters that we could use as avatars for ourselves so that we could physically act out the motions inside of VRChat and then capture that. So I gave them the FBX, and I'll show you here. I have used Unity once, and it was 10 minutes this morning. So you can see here, like this up here is what the actor would see, you know, whenever he's on stage acting, so that he can make sure that he's lined up correctly. And up here, we've got the actual camera. Now, let me open up a video that I took. Okay, so this is what it looked like while I was in VRChat, you know. We had this entire studio set up, and they put it on a green screen so that we could actually, you know, the people could walk around and actually act out the stuff, and then we could easily key it. Now, when they were building this, they didn't know what all we wanted. See, up there you can see the actual camera that I was working with. So what was cool, they were building it like in a way that if we needed to change stuff, we could. So he built this controller to where we could change the background from white to black to green, whatever we wanted to use. Now, when we were shooting this, or once we were recording this, we wanted to make sure that we didn't have the cube in there. So let me see if I can jump ahead. So there we go. He's got this button that he built to actually turn off the cube. So while we were there, the person could actually act it out. Let me see if I can jump forward. There's also some, you know, real-time lighting. This is someone actually acting it out where they would stand. And it was cool. It was like being in an actual production. So this is what we ended up with. It was like being in an actual production. I was the director. Ron Miller, one of the guys over at VRChat, who put this all together, he was actually acting it out. And he pumped the audio from Ableton in as a microphone input. So we would play the audio, and then he would act everything out, and the mouth movements would sync up perfectly. So you can see that's basically how we did the Rick and Morty cube, you know, with a little bit more comping and stuff. And I'll show you just a little bit. This is what it looked like. It's like a one-time thing that they played. And so this was the crowd at New Year's Eve. It was so much fun to be able to work on this, and people got really excited about it. So awesome. So next up is Dave. Hey, see, I didn't go that far over. Next up is Dave. He's going to go over the projection mapping stuff that we did for Busch Gardens. Thank you.
Hey, how's everybody doing? Again, I'm Dave Koss. I'm going to be showing off the Busch Gardens projection mapping. And I'll show you, start out here by showing you a video of what that looks like. Let me get my stuff up here. Here we go. All right, so this is kind of what projection mapping looks like if you haven't seen it before. Projection mapping is taking projectors and projecting video onto things like buildings and creating lots of light and shadow gags that are happening in the video, but it makes it look like it's actually happening on the building. So our client was Premier Illuminations. David Hare was our client at Premier Illuminations, and then we also hired our friend Jared at Convergence Projection Group. Shout out to them. Jared was an amazing projectionist extraordinaire, so he helped us figure that stuff out. I'll show you some of the behind-the-scenes photos here. You can see this is when we were setting up the canvas a little bit. We had 12 projectors. They were basically 6 canvases on this building. These are double-stacked projectors. You can see what they look like here. And we had them up in a room. It was very, very hot. Lots of wires, lots of servers running. There's a picture of Matt right there waving at me. So the way that, what we did is we created that building, that German clock tower, in Cinema 4D. So we could do things like Voronoi fracture and dynamics, gags with it and everything. And the way that we accomplished that is by using something called photogrammetry. A lot of people use what is called LiDAR to get models of these buildings, especially if they don't have CAD drawings and things like that. But we used photogrammetry. Photogrammetry takes different photos and GPS data, and it can actually put them together and make a model out of it. And so I was talking at NAB with my friend Sabor Mirazzotti, and he was giving me some tips. One of the things he said is I should use this automation software to get my drone up in the air. And so that's the first thing we did, is we had it go automate and just fly around by itself and get a whole bunch of pictures. And we use the Mavic Pro, which is under $1,000. It's a really great drone. I really like it. Fits almost in the palm of your hand, as you can see there. And when we bring those into a program called Agisoft Photoscan, it's able to take that data and build a point cloud from it. And it sits there for quite a while, actually, and builds that point cloud. And when it's done, it reconstructs the building, textures and all. So you can see this is an initial one we did just to make sure everything was working. It's kind of rough. It's kind of smeary, kind of like Google or Earth or something like that. And once you kind of get it where you want it, then you let the CPU sit there and crunch and crunch and crunch and crunch, so it's like super accurate and it looks really good. So when it's done, what we end up with is an FBX that we can bring into Cinema 4D. And it's still a little bit messy. It's got a lot of polygons going on, but this is going to help us reconstruct the building. So if I turn off that building, turn on my reconstruction, you can see how accurate this is here. We were able to use the measurements that we did on site, along with the textures that we got and everything else from the photogrammetry to reconstruct the building. And then once it's in there, we were able to do things like this. In between shows, we actually had slow-moving lighting effects and things that made it look like there was actually light fixtures on site, like it was concert light fixtures, moving light fixtures. So you can see all of these shadows down here from the lights. Over here, you can see the shadows all going on in the inside. None of that is real. It's all just video being projected back on. And since we built that model, we're able to bring in those shadows from Cinema 4D and just put them right back onto the building. We used spotlights in order to do this, but we were using a third-party render engine called Octane. So Octane doesn't have spotlights, but luckily, Matt and I created a plugin a couple years ago that lets you do spotlights in Cinema 4D. I really like the spotlights in Cinema 4D and how they work, and so we made this plugin with Espresso, which is a visual programming language inside of Cinema 4D, and made the Octane spotlight match with what you could see in the viewport. And it was really nice to have handy because we wouldn't have been able to do it so fast if we didn't have our own plugin. So another thing that we did was we used a different kind of camera. Usually in Cinema 4D, you're using the default perspective camera. But you can see here, if we projected this back onto the building, these areas right here on the sides are kind of obfuscated because of the perspective that you're seeing. So we used a parallel camera instead. And you'll notice the difference here is it looks like this. It's very flat. So we can project everything straight back onto the building. Now, if I go in perspective view, I'm going to turn off this template here. And I'm going to turn on just a basic cube. That's all it is. And if I grab the cube in perspective view, what happens is it comes toward the camera and it goes away. But we are doing parallel projection. So that meant that when we were doing shadow and light gags that were coming away from the camera and toward the audience and creating shadows, we actually had to do some trickery with that. We had to slant things at certain angles to make it fake perspective. We had to do things like keyframe scale of things like this cube. So if I had it coming toward the camera, I'd have to just scale it up a little bit so it looked like it was coming toward the camera. But that gave a really cool effect, being able to have these shadows and things like that. Another thing that we used were object buffers. We used a lot of 2D as well as 3D. We're using a lot of After Effects. And so when you have different pieces of geometry in Cinema 4D, you can put a Cinema 4D object buffer tag on certain pieces of geometry and bring black and white values in as a separate render so you can use them as masks. You can see here, too, the same thing. We call this the gingerbread. We could use that as a mask and do color and light gags with that as well, because we were a little bit limited on time. So we did some stuff simple as well as the stuff in 3D. And then our canvas, this is what our canvas looked like here. We had the 6 different outputs at different resolutions for the different projectors, and one of those reasons is because the stuff in the middle is closer, so you're going to have to focus the projector closer. So those were all output separately, and different ones had different masks on them based on which ones they were. So we export out of After Effects, and we have 6 movies to play on those projectors. And this was kind of fun. E.J. Hassenfrost's Pixelate It plugin, we used this for the ceiling at one point to make a little video game. So this was kind of fun to do. So that was a lot of fun. So you can see that there's a lot of easy things that you can do when you're projection mapping with just basic shadows and light that really have a great, cool look. The X-Particles thing we did here with the Comet, this is done in X-Particles. It's a third-party particle plugin. It's incredibly versatile. But you can see this is another example. It's just very, very simple, but it's creating really cool lights and shadows. So I'm going to show a basic setup here of X-Particles. This is kind of like an introduction to X-Particles if you haven't seen it before. So on the building, you can see here, it's going to play back kind of slow because it's calculating on the fly. But those are the particles there at the top. And we have splines moving around, and it's basically the particles are just following the spline around, going in and out of the building, and they have a luminant or emission texture on them that just goes in and out of the building and creates those shadows and light. So here's a very simple setup, and I'll show you how to do this if you've never seen X-Particles before. I have a circle spline and a sphere, and on the sphere, I'm going to just add a Cinema 4D align to spline tag, and I'm going to put the circle path right in there. And immediately, it's on the path. My position's at 0, and I'm going to keyframe that at frame 0, and then I'm going to go to frame 90 and keyframe it at 100. So when I hit play, you've got the sphere going around the spline. So we've got that going for us, which is nice. And we want to add the particles. So I'm going to go up to X-Particles and make a brand new X-Particle system. Here's my emitter right here. And when I hit play, this is what you get. Now, this is just a rectangle emitting particles. We want it to come out of the sphere. So if I change my emitter shape to an object and grab the sphere and put it in there, I'm going to change the color just a little bit on display so you can see that a little bit better. So now we've got particles coming out of it, and I'm going to do some modifications. Under emission, I'm going to change the speed to 10. So that's looking a little bit better. It's starting to look more like a little comet. And I'm going to change the radius of these particles to 0.5, and we'll talk about why that is here in a little bit. So the first thing I'm going to do is add an emission texture to this sphere. Now, you can do this in any render engine. I'm doing this in Octane because that's what we used. So I am going to create a Cinema 4D Octane material, and I'm going to go to emission, do a texture emission, and I'm just going to do a color. This is a C4D RGB spectrum, just a little bit of a light blue, and I'm going to throw it onto the sphere. Now I'm going to open my live viewer for Octane and put it to the side here so you can see what this does. Over here. There we go. So when I power it up, this is what happens. Not much yet. So we need something to project shadow and light onto. So I'm just creating a basic cube, and I'm going to move that back in Z just a little bit, but it's still light. So the other thing that we have to do is create a sky that is black. So there we go. Now it's a little bit bright, so I'm going to tone it down just a little bit. On my emission texture, I'm just going to bring the power down. So there is the front of the comet right there, and it's casting that light. Now, we have this trail built, but we don't see anything. That's because there is no geometry to those particles yet, so we have to create that. So we'll go to generators, and we're going to go down to sprites. Those sprites are going to come from somewhere. Where are they going to come from? That emitter that we set up. So I'm just going to drag it in there. If I hit play, right now we just have a bunch of cubes. And those cubes are not what we want at all. So I'm going to go back to the sprite, and I'm going to tell it that I want a sphere. But we do not want 12 segments. We're going to go with the lowest possible, which is 3. When I start it back over, we'll wait for it to come by here. And now we have those tiny spheres. And they are that size because right here, this is based on that particle radius that we set up. So the last part of this is that we have to make it emit light as well. So I'm just going to copy and paste that existing texture, emission texture, and put it on my sprites. And it's super blown out, so we're just going to do the same thing we did before. Just bring that down a little bit. So now we have a comet and trail. We can do all sorts of stuff with it, change the colors, make it move around, change the spline. And one of the things that I really like in Octane is their camera system has post effects. So if I go to post-processing and I turn on the post, I can do cool stuff right here, like bloom power, glare power. I can do like the star-looking thing. I can change the amount. I can change the blur and the angle. And so that's how we created that comet. The other thing that we used was Greyscalegorilla's Signal plugin, which is a really versatile plugin. I really, really like it. It does a number of things, but it didn't do beats per minute, and Deadmau5 kind of like, I guess, struck up the idea in development to add this beats per minute thing to it, which is really great, because when you're creating stuff like this, you don't necessarily want to go in and keyframe every beat, and then you do something else that's on the beat, and you have to keyframe every beat, because that's just going to take forever, and what if you're a little bit off, and then something was off like 1 or 2 frames, and you got to go fix it. So what we wanted was a template that would really help us, so where all that stuff was set from the get-go, and we didn't have to worry about the BPMs for any of these individual elements. So when we built this, let me just close this so you can see it. When we built this, we set up the different parts of the songs, and we put Signal plugin on it with the beats per minute already set, so we could use that as a reference. So if I hit play, so this is going through the different sections, and not only that, but you can see down at the bottom, we have every individual beat of the measure, not just like at the top where it's every beat of the measure. So I'm going to show you how we did that and how you would use that as a template. So I have a basic plane set up here, and the first thing that I need to do is I need to bring in my music. And I'm going to start with just a basic null, and I'm going to call it audio. And whenever I'm doing audio in Cinema 4D, I like to do it this way. I think there's a couple different ways you can do it. But the first thing I do on my null is I keyframe it. The reason is because when I right-click to show tracks and my dope sheet comes up, it's automatically going to show up in this instead of me having to change my settings because it's set to show keyframes automatically. So if I go to Create, I'm going to add a special track of sound. And under Sound, I'm going to load up a track. So for this, I'm going to use this MP3 file here. Now, I don't want to start it right at the beginning. I actually want to go inward just a little bit, and I have this written down just so I could remember. It's 7,653 frames. So I'm going to go negative 7653, and that's where this track's going to start. It's a little soft. I'd have to turn it up just a little bit. All right. So now we have the track, but we've got to do something with it. So I'm going to go to my plane, and I'm going to add the signal plugin, and particularly beats per minute. Now, what I know about this song is that it's at 128 beats per minute, so I don't have to guess. If on some of them I did have to guess, or I had to measure it, I had an app, I could just tap out the beats per minute. And so it's 128 beats per minute, but we have to drive this. So if I hit play, we've got our music and everything. One of the things that you have to remember when you're working with audio is right here at the bottom you have this all frames on. By default, it's going to show all the frames in your animation, which is fine, but if the viewport gets laggy, it's going to start skipping the music because it's trying to stay, it's trying to show every frame, not necessarily play in real time. So if you turn off all frames, it will skip the frames that it can't handle if the viewport is really, really heavy, and then you will hear the music in real time. So I'm going to go to my plane. We're going to have this drive the height. So all I have to do is take the height and drag it into the plugin. And when I hit play, now it might be slightly off. And if it is, all you have to do is work with your time offset here just to get it right on. The other thing that it has on top is the strength. So if I bring down the strength just a little bit, I can adjust how much it's driving this. So that's great. So that's set up. So the next thing that we want to do is set up the individual beats for the measure. So I'm just going to duplicate this one here. This is going to be 1. I'm going to change the color because we want to distinguish the difference here. And I'm going to change size as well. I'm going to move this over here. So that's 1. On my tag, I'm going to bring down the strength a little bit too. So that's beat 1, but you notice it's still going on every beat. So we have to assign the individual beats. So I'm going to control drag and create 1, 2, 3, and 4. So if I put 2 here, 3, and then 4, now we have the 4 individual beats. And if I go to my tag, I can go to the sequencer down here, and I only want 1 to be on the first beat. So I'll just turn off 2, 3, and 4. I'm going to just duplicate this deal here. So that's the second beat for the second one. Only the third beat on the third one, and on the fourth one, there we go. So when I hit play now, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So then I can use this as a template to drive other things. So if I want to put a sphere in the scene, and I want that to only be on the first beat, all I have to do is control drag that tag up to the sphere. But when I hit play, you're going to notice it's not doing anything. That's because it was assigned to the height to begin with. So if I go to the sphere and I put the radius, just drag the radius in here instead, now it's only hitting on the ones. I can make that a little bit smaller. And I can use it to drive other things as well. So if I copy and paste this texture, I'm going to change it to blue and have it drive the brightness. So control drag the tag, so I have a duplicate of this. And I'm going to just have it affect this brightness of this texture. We might have to adjust the strength a little bit. If I go in here, take this down to 0, now it's driving that as well. So it's just, once you get this set up, you're just copying the tag over and over again. And lastly, the other thing that we used was the projection simulator. So when we were showing this to the client, there was a question like, okay, well, this looks really good, but what is it going to look like on the building? So one of the things we had to do was build a simulation to show what it would look like. And the great thing about Cinema 4D's viewport is we can do this in real time. So I have my texture here, which is actually just an MP4 file. And usually when you're in Cinema 4D, there are different types of texture projection. And by default, it's usually UVW mapping. And so on the building, we projected like this. We projected the MP4 onto the building. And this way we could see in real time, in the viewport, what it looked like. So I've got that MP4, and if I were to just, let's say, put the texture onto the building, this is what would happen. Because this is just trying to UVW like to this original FBX, and that's not going to work. So instead, what we use is camera mapping. And when we click on camera mapping, it does that. It's kind of freaking out. But I had one of those parallel cameras set up. So it's basically acting like a projector on site. And so under the tag where you have camera mapping, if you drag your projector into there, you can see that it projects it straight back on. So if I delete that, I'll show you the one that I had nice and clean. If I move this, you can see what it's doing. All it is a projector. It's not actually projecting, but it's doing the texture in such a way, it's projecting the texture in such a way onto the geometry that it looks like the projection. And the great thing about this is for the client. The client is able to see this in real time, and we can send them different views of what it would look like throughout. So if I turn off this camera, I can say, okay, well, this is what I want it to look like from this view. Is this going to look okay? Are they going to be able to see all the things that I want them to see from these different angles? So it's a great way to visualize, and it's incredible because it's all real time. So that's a look at how we set up the projection mapping for Busch Gardens. I'm going to ask Matt to come up here real quick. When the two of us started at a little company in Dallas, we both decided we wanted to start a tutorial site. And we said, okay, well, we want it to be related to something having to do with MoGraph. What's the name going to be?
Would be a fun name.
Yeah.
A play off of MoGraph.
We couldn't get the MoGraph.com because the China web squatters.
There were some web squatters sitting on the
high
domain.
dollar, all that. So we said, okay, well, we're bros doing MoGraph, so BroGraph. So we'll call it BroGraph. But what is the next thing that we're going to do? What's our next big venture? So we have something we've been working on for next year, and today we wanted to give you a preview of what that is.
We're creative.
We're passionate.
We're artists.
We love to experiment.
To entertain. To inspire.
We're motion designers. Women. Men.
Individuals with a love for our craft.
It's our trade.
Our livelihood.
And our hobby.
We consider ourselves lucky for being able to do what we love for a living.
Whenever we can give back to the community, we give back.
We spend countless hours at our desks working, while simultaneously making friends and sharing knowledge all around the world.
But there's something special that makes our industry truly unique.
Community.
Introducing a new hub for motion designers to get access to all the tools they need for success.
Take online classes and learn from your favorite artists.
Listen to the latest industry news on our network of motion graphics podcasts.
Connect with your network of trusted friends and contractors.
Find local motion graphics meetups anywhere in the world.
And easily search through a massive database of free tutorials and articles.
Our new community is waiting for you.
Come join us.
Woohoo! So we basically bought out the web squatters. So MoGraph.com coming next year. We're super excited about it, and it's going to be something big. So you guys can go online, sign up for to hear about updates and stuff like that.
We're doing a call out right now.
Doing a call out, yeah. So also, if you guys are content creators, podcasters, tutorials, if you do classes, if you're looking to get involved, go on, sign up. Click on the button that says I want to get involved. So closing slide. There we go. Yep. Matt Milstead with Nexus Motion, BroGraph, and now MoGraph.com. So thank you guys so much for having us. Big shout out to Maxon for putting this all together. So thank you guys.
Thanks, everyone.